If you own a boat with a Mercruiser, you're probably realizing that it's really difficult to find a mechanic to work on an IO nowadays. Which begs the question, what is more difficult? Doing your spring tune-up or finding a reliable mechanic to actually do it? Stick around, the answer might surprise you. Okay, let's review the basics that you need for your spring tune-up. Got 3 quarts of Gear Lube for our drive. We've got our oil and new oil filter for the engine. We've got our new Cap and Rotor. We've got 8 new NGK Iridium spark plugs. We've got our fuel water separator, and we've got our Sacrificial Anodes. This is the basics you need for your spring tune-up. So before I do any engine work, what I'd like to do is first start the engine up. I do that for 2 reasons. One, it was working in the fall, so it should be working now. The second reason is it's a lot easier to do an oil change when the oil's nice and warm than when it's cold. Now, that only leads us to cooling. You still need to cool the boat engine while it's on blocks, right? So for my boat, I've got a Bravo. If you have an Alpha, this does not work on an Alpha. An Alpha's impeller is actually in the drive. We'll cover that in a second. But I've got a Bravo 1 Outdrive, so my impeller is actually on the engine. So all I have to do to cool my engine is take this adapter, put it on my garden hose, and then hand it up to my assistant. Thanks, Captain John. You're welcome. Now, if you have an Alpha drive, the pump for the Alpha is actually in the drive itself, the impeller. And you need one of these. You're going to take this and slip it over the drive and get it over the pickups. Make sure the water's on before you ever turn on the engine if you've got an Alpha, because you don't want to blow up or burn out your impeller in the drive. So the first thing we're going to do before we even start the engine, we're going to check 3 things. First thing, we're going to check our oil. We want to make sure we're good, which we are. We're going to check our belt, just make sure the tension's good, and we're going to check our gear lube. We're just going to put this in here and turn the water on and start it up. All right, so we're just going to check out our gauges now. Our voltage is good. Our pressure is good. And we'll just wait for the temperature to come up, which will be a couple of minutes. So it's been about 10 minutes. Our temperature is up to operating temperature. Our oil pressure is still good. And our voltage is still perfect. Shut it off, and we'll extract the oil. What we'll do, take a dipstick. What I like to do is kind of match up the hose that I'm going to put in and the dipstick, just to know about how far in it has to go to hit the bottom. Alright, so this is the fun part. So what I do is I take the box and I have it ready. And you would think that all the oil from this filter would go down. It doesn't. And try doing this as best as possible. So remember, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. It's amazing how hard that is to get off, even though it's only hand tightened on. And yes, it is full. Next, we'll change our fuel filter. The hardest part of this is getting in and out of the engine compartment. Oh, quit complaining, you need the exercise. Like you're one to talk? All right, JT, coming up next, we've got the cap and rotor. Probably out of everything we're doing today, this is probably the tricky. I'd agree with that. Okay, but before we get to that, you're going to show us a couple of things you've got here, right? So just going to go over a couple of things that it's always great to have within arm's reach when you're in the engine room. With some type of lubrication, you can actually look this up online. This is a combination of acetone and transmission fluid. This thing will almost get anything free. The other thing, always have your gloves available. The other thing I'm going to be using today is duct seal. This is, kind of like sticky stuff that you put on the side of your house. And you'll see what I use this for shortly. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave us a message in the comments section below. We'd love to answer your questions. Get to work. Before we start, one thing to note, on this particular engine, on mine, on the 383 stroker, this has got what they call the crab distributor cap on it. This has got a T20 head on it, okay? So you need a special tool for it. So I've got my cheap little Harbor Freight ones. This will work just fine. But if you're ever in doubt as far as what the actual head is, take your new ones and check this first with the new ones. That should be what's on the engine currently if you've got the right parts. You'll see there's not a lot of room to work back here. Now this is the new one. There's 2 screws. So what we're going to do is we're going to locate those on the distributor cap, and we're going to go with a little plan of attack. So what I'm going to do is once I've got these screws loosened up and the distributor cap actually off, I'm going to take these 5, right? So we're going to line it up. There's 5 on one side, 4 on the other side. I'm going to take one at a time. I'm going to take it off and put it onto this one. And that'll give me enough room to get this out of here and be able to get to the actual rotor underneath. And then once I've got the rotor off, then I'm going to put the new rotor on. Then I'm going to put the cap in position. And then I'm going to take these 4 and put them onto here. So it's going to be a step-by-step process. Now, I don't like losing screws. So what I'm going to do is I just took a little bit of this duct seal and I put a little bit on the tip of T20 head. And what this is going to do is when I get it down there, I'm going to try not to drop it and, catch it in the left hand. But just in case, this will give it a little bit more, tackiness to actually get in there and get the screw off. Now, the more I look at this, I'm thinking it'll be easier to remove these 4 from this side and put it onto the new one, and then be able to have this much space to get this thing up and out than to get it around all this stuff over here. Okay, so we got all 4 on the one side. It took a few minutes. And the good thing is as you're trying to take those off, the cap becomes nice and loose. So it makes getting that off that much easier. You don't have to pry it off or anything. Just the wiggling, trying to get the spark plug wires off, gets it nice and loose. We're going to go for the actual rotor. And these are going to be T15 screws. And we're going to do the same thing that we did before. If you have any doubt on how to get this thing off, try using your tool with the new screws that it came with. They should be the exact same ones. If you got the older distributor cap and rotor, then all you need is a screwdriver to kind of pry up the old rotor inside. Note which way the rotor is orientated at the moment, right? So the connection is going out and off to the left. So make sure your new one goes on the same way. So what I like to do is I like to kind of get everything orientated in the same direction, so I know I'm not going to mess up. And another great idea is just to film what you're doing and take pictures of everything while you're doing it. So then if you have any question on how something was, you have a frame of reference to go back to. Let's get each one loose. I'm not going to remove anything yet. Put a little of my duct seal putty on there. The back one's already off. I'm just going to hold the rotor, remove them, and just take the whole thing out. There. Now I'm going to put the screws back in, and it's all set to go. Bring this over and line this up as best as possible. Okay, you don't need to torque these down, just need to get them snug. And then we can start putting the other plugs back on the other side. I'm going to do this the same way, one by one. So I'll work my way from the front to the back. And when I get to the last two, I'm going to take off this fourth one in the back. And I didn't push all these on, so before I do anything else, these are all going to get pushed on all the way. I'm going to take the last one, or the back one, off. And this is the common one. So now I can get this out of here. Give me a little bit more room. Okay. So the common's having a little bit of a hard time getting on, so what I used is a little Special Lube 101 with Teflon, and I just put it on the outer portion of this. Put a little bit of the duct seal on there. Try to maneuver this in here without the screw falling, just like that. Show you how to do one of these spark plugs. We're just going to get our hand behind here, going to kind of wiggle it a little bit, and pull off. Here we go. We got two different sockets here, one with a little black filler and one without. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with the one without. Get on there, put it straight as possible. Let's give it a little tug. That's all you need to do. I'm going to take this off. I'm going to switch this one out. I'm going to put the one with the little rubber thing in there. Should be able to take this off right by hand. There we go. Same thing, we're going to take our new spark plug. We're just going to put it barely in there. It's just barely in. This has got the rubber piece in there. And same thing. Just going to take it, line it up. We're going to go backwards first. And you can hear it click. As soon as it clicks, then you can start going forward. So you don't want to cross thread anything. Should be able to go in just as easy as it came out. We got that. I'm going to pull that off. I'm going to switch back to the socket without. Put the socket on there. And just 1, 2, 3. That's it. I'm going to grab this, put it back on, and you want to hear it click. There you go. Should feel it go click. We are rocking and rolling. What's up next? Gear Lube. What are you, taking a break? You got this. I'll just make sure you don't mess anything up. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove our prop. On a Bravo, the drain plug is actually behind the prop. If you're working with an Alpha, on the Alpha, the drain plug is up in the front. Now, if you don't have an impact gun, you want to put a piece of wood here and get a breaker bar to get this off. This is a 1 1/16 socket. Next, we're going to remove our sacrificial anode with our 5/16 socket. Okay, we got our pan underneath our drive. Now we're just going to remove the drain plug. While that's drained out, I'm going to start replacing the sacrificial anodes. Okay, so once again, we've got our 5/16. So we're going to pop this out. Okay, so this is a new drive that I got from Mercury. It's actually a 1/2-inch socket to get out. The new one is an Allen key, 3/8. All right, so I'm just gonna try a little duct seal on there. Voila. Okay, we got all of our Gear Lube drained. So we trimmed up the drive now because it just makes getting to these two screws on the sacrificial anode that much easier. And this is our 9/16 socket. Once you got it loosened, it's easy to do by hand and it just comes off. What I like to do is just get everything, again, all out and situated with all the washers on all the screws and lined up with their associated anodes. Just gonna hand tighten them in. Once we got them flush, then we'll just tighten them up a little bit. I'm going to do one side so you can see where our screws are, right here and right there. I'm going to put that on. I'm going to take our screw, put that in there just like that. Short socket. I'm going to put it on there, pick it up a little bit, then go forward and be able to just hand tighten it on. So you leave a little gap. There you go, so then you can feel it. You want to leave a little wiggle room so then you can get the other one on. Okay, so if you were to look up in here, you'd see that there's metal here and it can't go this way. So that means it has to go this way. So it's going to go on there. We've got our 3/8. Take this down. Just like that. Done. Okay, so here's how we do our gear loop. We've got both screws out up here and down here. We're going to put the pump into the gear lube. We're going to put this into the bottom of the drive. And we're going to pump this up and fill the drive from the bottom up. And once we start seeing gear lube come out of here, we're going to put the screw in here and cap this off. One thing to make sure you don't do is don't run this bottle all the way down to the bottom. Leave a little bit in there. You don't want to get any air bubbles coming through this tube. And you're going to use this to fill up the reservoir when we're done. Okay, so we took about 2 quarts to get to that point. So now we're just going to cap this off. So now comes the biggest pain in the ass part, which is getting this out of here and the screw in as fast as possible and allow as little of the gear loop to drain back out as possible. Too bad the other clown wasn't here. You could have made him do this part. Yeah, no kidding. Okay, so you want your gloves on, you want to have your towels ready, and you want everything set to go. So now we can do our last sacrificial anode, the one that goes behind the prop. And this is another great set of tools to have in your arsenal. It's the magnetic nut setter set. This thing is awesome. I'm not going to put it all the way in. I'm going to do the other side. And over tighten them. Hey guys, what's going on? What can I do to help? We're done. Oh, at least I brought some beers. Wait, you bought a 6-pack for 3 of us? I quit drinking. Wait, would you forget? Never mind. Hope everybody has a great season. Look for us out on the water. Captain John from Nautisphere. Out.